Why isn't it talking? Oh, volume's not turned up. Hey, everybody. I don't know how loud we want it. There we go.
That sounds good.
Yep.
Wonderful.
So it is recording.
Excellent. Oh, so we're live?
Yep.
We are live. Wonderful. Good evening, everybody who is either in person or online or watching recording subsequently on our YouTube channel. I'm going to call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Ulysses Town Board. It is May 24th, 2022 at 7:00 p.m. May we have a roll call vote, please? Or not roll call vote, just a roll call.
Yep.
No voting needed.
Ms. Marino,
Here.
Mr. Boggs,
Present.
Ms. Olson,
Present.
Mr. Goldman, Ms. Bouchard, and Caitlin, will you take the microphone?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. We have an agenda, but I think we might have some things we need to move around. I'm going to, or at least add to, I would like to request the addition of discussion and possible resolution authorizing an application for grant writing assistance from the Nature Conservatory to be added to the end of new business.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there
Second.
any, thank you, just a sec. Are there any other alterations that we need to make? Do you want to, Roxanne, would you like to keep item 7E on there as a discussion?
Yeah.
Perfect. So then we don't need to remove anything. So we can add the Nature Conservancy application to 7F would be the item. Excellent. So there was a motion, I think, and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion or alteration? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, excellent. Moving on, we will have privilege of the floor. Tonight, we're going to do 3 minutes per person who would like to speak, both online and in person. Is there anybody wishing to address us on any item? Now is the time if you'd like to talk, is to let us know. Please raise your hand or otherwise indicate if you're online or let us know. You may go first if you would like to. Be happy to hear from you. Would you mind testing it just for a sec? I want to make sure people can hear you online, so we're not going to waste any of your time doing that. Would you mind just giving us a little test from there and see if people can hear you?
Hello, my name is William Conroy and I'm the Vice President of the Twinsburg Fair.
Wonderful. For those online, can you hear Linda? Am I seeing your head nodding? Yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. So please go ahead.
Okay. I'm obviously here to talk about the exotic animal thing that you guys have proposed. And, I appreciate what you guys do, but some of my concerns are I don't feel that by definition, any of the claims have been met. As far as, I wasn't at the last meeting, but when we had our meeting, they talked about inhumane conditions and some other stuff that went along with this process. These animals are checked by vets. They were checked by vets twice at our fair. So if you take the 5-month time that they're on the road, they see anywhere from 35 to 50 vets, depending on the year. And I'm wondering why none of them vets have raised any flags of inhumane conditions or any such thing like that. We bring them from the Fair Board's perspective, we bring these here for, obviously some people call it entertainment, but it's education. Another thing that, along those lines is that a lot of these animals are endangered, and most of them that when they talk about the numbers of these animals in existence, most of them are in captivity. Most of them have been born in captivity, and that costs money. And taking these animals around and educating people on them and showing them that's one of the ways that they recuperate some of the cost of keeping some of these animals. With that being said, I think that's the first time we've had the tigers at the fair in the past. I've been on the board for 7 years. And this is the first time since I've been there that we had the tigers. And I can tell you that we're working on 2024's fair. And so I don't know if this is the best use of your time for something that might happen once every 15 years. And on top of that, we're losing these, it's a dying industry, the traveling animals, as far as the venues aren't there for them to go to. But as a representative of the fair, I don't want to relinquish the right to be able to have, like, when we have the circus comes to, every year the circus comes to the fairgrounds. And, you know, they have a variety of animals. And so, well, you know, how does that impact the circus coming to town? And, you know, the different things. I know I'm probably preaching my 3 minutes here.
Nope, it'll go off when you're
Okay.
in the time. You
So,
still have
I mean,
3
that's
seconds.
just our stand from the fair. And we've also talked to several of our representatives, because the Trumansburg Fair is a New York State agricultural fair. So we belong to the New York State Agricultural Association. I've talked to the Whitney Point Fair. I've talked to the Steuben County Fair, and they've never seen anything they've never been approached in their areas for anything like this. But we're waiting to hear back from the state, but we've reached out to them, but you know, they say because we're a New York State Agricultural Fair operating in Trumansburg, that we would be exempt from this anyway. I don't know that to be fact. But that's.
Who said that, sorry?
What's that?
Who said that? I didn't quite catch. Who-
Well, the president of the Whitney Point Fair I talked to, and the
Oh,
president of the Steuben
but not
County.
just New York. State.
And New York State, the 2 people we talked to at the state they've never dealt with this. So they're bumping it up, and we're waiting to get information back.
Thank you. As you get information back, I think we would all be very interested to see it. If you wouldn't mind sharing it with us, we'd appreciate it.
That's fine.
Great, well, thank you.
So
Excellent.
I'm gonna leave you guys alone.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the public who's attending online who would be interested in addressing the board on any subject? I am not seeing any hands, so there is going to be a second privilege of the floor at the end of our meeting. So if there's anybody who thinks of something in the interim who would like to address us, there's another opportunity for public comment. Okay,
You guys are going into business now, right?
we are, yep,
You guys enjoy your
Well,
night.
can I just
Don't
ask
say
a
too-
question before you go?
Of course.
I'm sorry, but I didn't check every single thing on the website. So was the other material that we got with all the citations of things on the
Yep.
website?
Yes.
So I don't know if you saw that, but there's material on the website that was provided by the committee that worked on this revised draft ordinance, and it also includes issues of relating to reports of treatment of animals and also.
But doesn't pertain to the animals that we have. I mean,
Well,
it's a broad.
Well, it was
it's a-
But it was the,
It's a
it
blanket.
was the companies that brought them, I think, when I just read it, but you could have a look, I just wanted to let you know that it's on there
Okay,
to have a
I mean, I
look.
looked at it before, and I
Okay.
know, like, the petition's a national petition. It's not a local petition, it's a national petition.
No, it's a local petition.
Well, the one I looked at during the fair, because we got emailed to the fair, started in Oregon. So that's really local as far as I'm concerned.
okay.
I
Just,
mean,
so-
I'm not here. to
oh, yes, no,
argue
no,
that-
no, what I
I
just,
just wanted you to
yeah.
know that that material is there.
So, and the fair board meets every 3rd Monday, and we've never had anybody come to the fair. board meeting, So,
oh, so just something I would say for the purpose of the audience, is we're gonna be moving on in old business. We're gonna have a presentation first, but in case you're walking out for that, before the board takes any action on this or any other topic that's gonna change the law, we will do 2 things. We will have a public education session, which can truly be more of a back and forth dialogue. It's not the public education session tonight. This is simply a working meeting for the board to get more understanding of the draft that we have before us. But we would do a public education session before any action is taken, and that would be followed by, at a different meeting, a public hearing. So this will be a multi-step process if anything's undertaken, as any new legislation would be for this board in particular. So there's definitely time to submit more comments. There's time to gather more information and provide it to the board. So thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Okay. We are going to move on to our presentation regarding the Climate Action Council. And I believe our presenter is present.
Good evening. Now's the time, is it?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're on.
Sure. I'll try to keep this brief, and I think Roxanne distributed a handout that we prepared. Is that correct? So I'm just going to talk from that. The background is the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, CLCPA, which was passed just under 3 years ago, and it's the most progressive legislation for any state in the country in terms of addressing greenhouse gas goals. So briefly, it sets up a novel way for accounting for greenhouse gases. It pays much more attention to methane emissions, and it pays attention to methane emissions even if they occur outside of our state, if it's a result of our using fuels in this state. And the context there is that, we of course banned fracking in New York State, and yet since then our use of natural gas has gone up faster than in this state than anywhere else in the country. And it's all fracked shale gas from Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia with huge methane emissions. So this accounting means that we take responsibility for those if we're using the gas. It also calls for a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions statewide, all economic sectors by 7.5 years from now, 2030. 85% reduction by 2050. It says that by 2030, renewable electricity has to be at least 70% of the total mix. And by 2040, 100% of our electricity will be carbon-free, no more fossil fuels. It also says specifically that 40% of any economic benefits have to go to historically disadvantaged communities. So it's a very, as I say, aggressive and progressive bill. It's exactly what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change tells us we need to be doing globally. Of course, very few other places are doing it, but here in New York, we're trying. The law did not say how we are to meet those targets. Instead, it established this group called the Climate Action Council. And I'm pleased to be one of the members. On the handout, there's a list of the other members. There are 12 people who are on it because of the law specifies their appointments. So Doreen Harris, president of NYSERDA, is a co-chair, together with Basil Sagos, DEC commissioner, and then Commissioner of Ag and Markets is a member, et cetera, et cetera. 12 people like that. 10 of us were appointed either by the governor or by the Assembly or by the Senate. And I was appointed by Assembly Speaker Kyle Heastie, representing the Democrats in the Assembly. So the council, we've had a lot of meetings since March 2020, 24 altogether. We have 9 advisory panels, and they've had hundreds of additional meetings. And the law dictated that we have a draft scoping plan by last December, which we did. And we came up with a 341-page actual report with another 1,500 pages of appendices behind it. Very strong input from our advisory panels and also from the environmental justice community. That's still out for public review. We've had 12 public hearings so far this spring. There's one more later this week. We're taking additional written input on the plan until June 10th. And then by law, we have to have a final plan by the end of this year. And that plan is binding. To the extent that state agencies have the ability to act, they are required to implement what our plan calls for. There are some cases where it will require further legislative action, but not too many. So the plan's a big deal. On the other side of my handout, or page 2, I just want to point out that with the new accounting method for greenhouse gases in New York, buildings make up by far the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, more than a third, 36%. Transportation second at 27%. Electricity's down there at 16%. Waste is surprisingly high, 12%, and that's because of all our landfills leaking out methane. Agriculture and industry are pretty low. And then I've suggested, again, the public can give input until June 10th. So far, I'm told we have received about 20,000 pages of comments, and people are sorting through those already, but I think having additional input is still valuable. And so some things I'd like to throw out for the town to consider are first, voicing general strong support for the draft scoping plan. I should say that although we're a pretty diverse group on the council, we passed the draft plan unanimously. Nonetheless, strong, powerful interests are very negative on it. There's a large effort in advertisements, misinformation to try and undercut it. And so expressing support, I think, is good. Chapter 11 is on transportation, and I would draw your attention particularly to the fact that we encourage more smart growth. We move rapidly to electric buses. One thing we did not really do an adequate job, I think, is talk about the need for bus services in rural areas. I'll point out that of the 22 of us on the board, only 2 of us live in rural areas. I'm the only, no other member lives within 180 miles of Ulysses. It's very urban focused. So I think saying something about the need for increased bus service in rural areas would be good, and also an accelerated move to electric buses. Chapter 12 is on buildings, and we call for a prohibition on using fossil fuels in new construction as of 2024. Again, powerful interests are very threatened by that, and yet our economic analysis shows that it'll construction, say using heat pumps instead of gas, actually cost less in terms of new construction, and then immediately have further payback. So that's a prime thing, but one that's we're getting a lot of pushback on. I'd also like you to consider urging that the scoping plan include upgrades for mobile and manufactured homes. And this is coming from Tompkins County, Martha Robertson and others. Our plan is actually silent on mobile and manufactured homes because, again, there aren't too many of us representing rural areas, but I think we can do a lot better there. Rental housing is another issue, again, that Tompkins County has brought up, because a building owner often has little or no financial incentive to reduce energy use. The costs are just passed on to the renter, and so we need to incentivize ways to have the owner really wants to do better. And then 2 final things. Chapter 15 is on agriculture and forestry, and agriculture is a small part of the emissions, only 5 to 6%. And the dairy industry in particular is exempt from regulation under the law. So our plan has no regulatory aspect there at all. But we are calling for ways to incentivize farmers to improve carbon sequestration in their agricultural soils and in forests as well. But we specifically say not to just do that in a vacuum, but also focus on water quality issues, such as the harmful algal blooms we're having in Cayuga Lake and other lakes, which the council specifically mentioned as a concern, because there are trade-offs there. Sometimes you can sequester carbon, but it might aggravate water quality or vice versa. We want to do both. And then the final thing I'd like to draw your attention to, again, under chapter 15 on forestry. Currently in the state, you have to own 1,000 acres of forest land in order to be included in state programs to assist forest landowners. And we're proposing to take that down from 1,000 down to 10 to 15 acres and make the financial incentives from state programs not just about lumber production, but also water quality, habitat, and biodiversity. And I will tell you, this was endorsed unanimously by the Climate Action Council. It's a direct outgrowth of what happened here in Ulysses a year or so ago. You know, we had a 35 acre parcel of land that was forested for the last 100 years that was cut down because the local owner decided that he would get more economic incentives from putting it into agriculture as opposed to keeping it in woodland. And I used that as an example in order to get this through. So I think if you look at the forest land in Ulysses, or in fact throughout the Finger Lakes, no private owner owns more than 100 acres. And so absolutely no one has ever been able to participate in these state programs. But by taking it to 10 acres, then all of a sudden a large amount of our forest land in the town becomes eligible for subsidies to protect and preserve it. So that's my quick summary, and I'd be happy to take questions if there's time.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions? I had a question. In my own work, I know that adapting and reusing existing buildings is helps preserve a lot of carbon that has been expended over time in the manufacturing of older buildings, and I'm a historic preservationist. That's not as much of an issue in the rural communities. I think we actually do a very good job. We have New York actually has the oldest residential building stock in the country. Does the plan address using and the value of reusing new buildings? Because the idea of demolishing everything and building an energy efficient building is obviously not a reasonable solution for many property owners.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. There's a fair amount of language, a few pages in the buildings chapter on trying to keep our existing housing stock and refurbish it, improve it. We actually spent a lot of time talking about how much effort to put into improving the envelope as opposed to simply going to replacing the fuel source. And we're a little ambivalent on that, but we lean towards putting more effort into replacing the heating systems, basically. So for new construction, as I say, we're proposing a complete ban on fossil fuels as of 2024. But then there are 6 million existing single-family homes in New York, and another 3 million people who live in apartments that are heated with fossil fuels. And the plan is calling for replacing all of those, getting fossil fuel out of all of them by 2050. We're hoping, well, we're more than hoping, we're calling for getting 2 million out of them changed by 2030. And we're putting a premium on replacing the heating system with heat pumps and not worrying so much about the envelope, because our economic analysis suggests that's the fastest way to reduce emissions.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, about the question about the greenhouse gas emissions by sector. So are these by source? So the electricity, is that at like the power plant level?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As the transportation shifts more towards electric vehicles and buildings shift more towards electric, in the short term, would we see the electric sector increase until we can get more?
No, not if we follow through on the plan. If we go completely beneficial electrification, so we take every single building in New York and move it away from fossil fuels, and we move the entire fleet of vehicles to electric vehicles, that's going to increase our electric consumption by 80% by 2050. But the plan also calls for increasing renewable electric generation faster than that transfer. So it will not increase the fossil emissions in time. And we're actually are on target for doing that, surprisingly.
Okay.
Great question, though.
Excellent. Were there any other questions this evening?
I was just going to add that there was one other thing on this list that Bob didn't mention, which is there's a chapter on land use, and they have a lot of things that would actually be very helpful to rural municipalities that don't have a lot of staff resources and things in terms of helping create tools and best management practices to increase forests and farmland protection and inform land use policies and comprehensive plans and to support having technical assistance in these kind of municipalities for smart growth and related planning, zoning, pre-development type things. So I mean, I think that's also a really valuable thing if anybody decides to do comments to really help our economy rise a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let me just add that in the plans, we will have a plan. We're required by law to have a plan. I think it'll be somewhat modified from where we are, but not hugely so probably. Most of the feedback we've gotten is positive despite pushback from industry. It's fairly radical in terms of what it's going to mean for across the state, but that is true within our town. And Tompkins County, of course, is in a leading position on a lot of these things, but I think Ulysses is in a position to do so well as well. Certainly in terms of the heating transition, et cetera, but also in terms of these agriculture and land use issues. And as I say, the only two members of the council who come from these rural areas are the Richard Ball, the Commissioner of Ag and Markets, and myself. And so he and I spent a lot of time talking through the detail of this. And I know Ag and Markets will be very, very interested in seeing some of this come to fruition.
Where is all the electricity going to come from?
Well, right now upstate, it's only 10% fossil fuels. It's 40% nuclear, and the rest is renewable already, mostly hydro. Downstate, we're about 80% natural gas at the moment, and 20% renewables. And so we need to move rapidly to decarbonize there while we increase it. And the state has already contracted to put in some massive offshore wind power to power New York City, Westchester County, and Long Island. The state has also contracted with Quebec to buy hydropower and is putting in a dedicated high efficiency transmission cable down the Hudson corridor. So we actually have things that are already underway to meet the 2030 goal for being less than 30% fossil energy statewide.
Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Wonderful. So thank you for the work that you're doing on this very important group and helping see towards the future of energy independence in our state and energy efficiency. So thank you. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Take care.
Now, Roxanne, were you gonna have a kind of resolution?
No, well, that's at the end of the meeting. and we can talk about that. And that's what Caitlin asked about earlier in general. Thanks.
Excellent. Well, next up is the exotic animal ordinance. We have a new draft for discussion. We last talked about this at our second meeting in April. And I committed to bringing it back if we had a revised draft at this meeting, and we do. So I'd like to welcome Kate Darfler and Molly Kraus to the meeting and to participate in this process as the subcommittee who worked on it. Along with Rich, sorry, you also, I know, worked on it.
So I guess one question I have is, given what, are we clear on Ag and Markets and how they relate to this proposed ordinance? Are we 100% clear? I mean, the fair people seem to think they're exempt because of the Ag and Market restrictions.
I would have no idea why they would be exempt from that law. That's not something I've come across. There are other, as you can see in the packet, there are other jurisdictions that have laws just like this, and I've not seen anything in my research that
In New
suggests
York,
they would be exempt.
in New York.
Yeah.
A lot.
No, and based on what, so the memo I wrote about ag markets, I hope that answered some of the questions that kind of came up about what ag markets, where they do have definitions, where they do regulate. It's very different between livestock. Fairs, they have regulations, but that doesn't mean that the town can't do something more strict, more stringent for a fair. Most of that is, I mean, things like, you know, tigers and stuff are allowed. A lot of stuff's allowed at the fair level, but it's not allowed at the livestock agricultural level. So that's they're both under ag and markets, as you saw the different laws that I called out, where I could see definitions and discussion done about these creatures. So
And it looks like in your modifications, you exempted all animals that Ag Market considers agricultural animals.
That was-
based on their definition.
Yeah. And that's so that exempt, accepted the llamas that we discussed, the ostriches, the emus, things like that, that other people had brought up as well. They were concerned
Bison.
about falling under that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we just made sure that anything that we could find in under livestock, under agriculture, under anything that would be under ag markets, which covers a lot, is called out as exempt from this ordinance completely.
So under penalties for offenses, what I'm reading here is if you have 8 exotic animals in a day at a fair, it's $250 per animal. Is that what you're suggesting?
That's actually what I think your lawyer, the town lawyer suggested, so, that was, yeah, it is up for the board
Yeah,
to
so-
discuss what you guys want to have for the company. If you're interested in that.
And I'm speaking of our town attorney is just entering the
Oh, no.
conversation right now. He was coming from
You're
another
right.
meeting, so. Nate, your ears must be ringing. You just got mentioned. We are discussing the draft local law on exotic animals in Traveling Animal Act. And I'll let you get settled, but we were discussing the specifically the portion of a penalty of $250 per offense per animal, which essentially be any animal. Be the $250 per day.
Nate, is that what you're suggesting? Nate, unmute.
It's not quite.
Not really.
He's in his car. There we go.
There we go. I'm in my car. My apologies. Can you repeat the question?
So the violation on this exotic animal looks like it's written $250 per offense, but each animal is an offense. So if you had 8 exotic animals, that's $250 times 8 each day. Is that what
Yep,
you're suggesting?
That is how that is written, and that is how that calculation would be done. Because every animal is a separate violation. Each animal is distinct and unique, and if you're mistreating one animal, the second animal applies equally. If you wanted to change that to have it as a collective, view, no matter how many animals a violation, counts as just one. I mean, I think that you could amend it that way.
I mean, how many exotic animals do people bring, generally, do you think come to a fair?
I mean, how many tigers? You had more than one last year.
You had what?
You had more than one tiger.
How many, do you know?
No, I don't know. I know in years past, there's a list in the packet that demonstrates it's been like at least over 5 a year. So we're not
We don't
talking
know how
about
many
like 20 or 30.
individuals, we don't know how many individual animals, but at least, 5 different.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm
species.
opposed to it. I just want to understand.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we can certainly take a look more closely at fines that other jurisdictions have suggested in their laws.
what
I
is
think
your
like-
fine for a nuisance of dogs or something like that? Other animal, I'm sure there's for mistreatment of other animals, there's some fine for the. is it
It's
equal to that?
probably a state law.
You're looking at the wrong people.
Well,
Don't
Ulysses got his own-
who don't do the judging.
Yeah.
Licensing one, isn't it, Kristen?
Yeah, it's for licensing. I don't think there's a
Mistreatment.
penalty.
Right, and that would be under the animal welfare.
Organizational meeting.
So would this apply to I would assume from my understanding of this, it would apply to, the violation would apply to the company or the entity that was bringing said animals, so it would not apply to the host of said animals, or how's that? Does that make sense?
Like,
Like,
question
Who
about
pays the
lawyer.
fee?
yeah,
Who pays-
Yeah, Nate, who pays?
So that will depend on how exactly it's written. Many codes can be written to allow a violation against both the owner or operator of a particular establishment, in this case, a traveling animal circus, and the property owner where that particular violation or ordinance is at issue. Now, I apologize, I don't have the language directly in front of me, but if it says in the ordinance, a violation of this will be punishable without specifying who does the violating, then that would be, whoever we're writing the ticket to. And if it's written to the property owner's defense, right, will be, well, it wasn't me who did this. And then the judge would decide whether they're a proper person to violate or not.
Well, it says, it's the way it's written now, it says it shall be unlawful for any person, business, entity, corporation, limited liability company, or any or other similar organization to allow for the display of the wild and or exotic animal in a traveling animal act. I mean, to me, that would read that it's potential to actually, file a violation or give a ticket to both the venue and the actual company. Because
And,
there
and
is-
I agree with that statement, Caitlin.
Okay.
I think that is a valid reading of that draft.
So the last time we discussed this, there were, I think there were a couple members, I'm not speaking for other members, but there were a couple of members who indicated that they were not interested in the law as it was proposed before, and there was others interested and had some questions. I specifically had questions about clarity on agricultural animals. But I would like to, get a sense from the board, what your thoughts are on the current draft, and if there are any further questions, or if the board is ready to proceed with action or not take action, or what the mood is.
By proceed with action, do you mean have a public information meeting?
Well, if there was, sufficient support for moving forward with a public education session, we can certainly, that would be a step to, if this is the draft we feel we are ready to take to the public. That our questions have been answered, doesn't mean the public won't have questions, obviously, but it would be the one that they would be educated upon. That would be a concrete next step we could take or not take, depending on the sentiment, or if there's more questions or amendments that you would be interested in being made.
I think it's important to decide who's gonna get the ticket. Who's gonna get the violation?
In this instance, in the current draft, Nate's reading, which is, I think is my reading also, not being a lawyer, would be that both the company showing the animals and the venue, because would be eligible for getting the tickets, because it's unlawful for any person, et cetera, to allow for the display. And so a fairgrounds would certainly, or any other organization would be allowing, a property would be allowing for a display, whether or not it's their animals or not. And the business who has the animals would certainly be allowing for it as well.
So this, excuse me, next meeting would be an information meeting, not a public hearing, or
It would be,
would it be the same? I'm just curious what level of steps we're looking at potentially.
it would be more of a back and forth. A public education session could be a back and forth dialogue with the public actually getting their answers, their questions asked and answered at the same time. And then that you would, the idea would be that was effectively, the draft might be tweaked a little bit, but the meat of the draft would be the draft that then goes to a public hearing if the board so chose to do that. If I think that to be fair to the public, I think if the board took a draft and did a public education session on it, but then emerged from that public education session with concerns about the draft and wanted to further amend it, it would be in the public's best interest to have an opportunity to then go to another round of public education on that new draft. I think it works best when there's some continuity between public education and actual public hearing, so that we're all talking about the same draft effectively. I think minor tweak. Yeah,
Caitlin, another reason for a public education session, right? So a public hearing is required for the board to vote and take action to approve a local law. Until you hold that public hearing, you can't take action, right? And members of the public, if they come to a public hearing, they might be prepared for you to take action tonight, and it's a valid response to say, well, we could vote to approve this tonight. If you hold the public education session, you can communicate like, we're not able to take action on this. We are moving forward in a deliberative fashion. This is an education session. We have to hold a public hearing. At the time that the draft is ready for, formal potential approval, that is when we hold the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Nate.
I'm not comfortable with having it wishy-washy who gets fined. So I think I'd recommend we find the traveling act, not the fair, not the fairgrounds. Just from a neighborly standpoint.
But what if the traveling act doesn't know and they get engaged and they
Ignorance
come
is-
here?
It's their due diligence, it's their job to determine the laws of where they're being contracted to. I just don't see the purpose of passing an ordinance if you're not going to enforce it.
No, obviously.
I mean,
Right, so why
I
wouldn't
think
you?
Mary's speaking to the right, like, it's also the fair, it's also the fair's responsibility to make sure that any act you're being lawful within the operations that you have. And that if you're contracting with a group that's unlawful, that they know, you're not allowed to bring these exotic traveling shows, like, bring livestock, bring your farm, bring your local stuff. Like, you can't bring these traveling exotic access. I think is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they have to know too, like the fair has to know that this is the law too, and,
True.
yeah.
I think just I would incentivize perhaps partnering with our local agriculture community more, so. Which you wouldn't have exotic, you don't have tigers and things to partner with.
It's still my favorite are the nurse sharks. in the last one.
Well, there were alligators.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the sentiment of the board? I mean, I think that I'm comfortable with the way it's currently drafted in the sense that I think it's splitting hairs to say that the business who has the animal versus the property who is hosting, the venue is hosting. I don't think splitting the two apart has any substantive value. But you know, we can obviously have more of a conversation about that, Richard.
It's not, I'm not hung up on it.
So,
Um,
yes,
I just like to kind of think through how the boots on the ground of this law is actually gonna work. So when there's a fair, the code officer is gonna do a walkthrough and go down the list and make sure which animals are approved and not approved, issue citations as needed. And the people who, if they receive a ticket, they're gonna need to appear in Town of Ulysses Court
Right,
to pay their fine. Is that,
yeah,
that how this is gonna work?
I don't see any other way it could work.
well, I would also, there's not a mechanism in this that's the way I read this is not written to say that it is requiring the code officer to preemptively do an inspection.
So you're saying there has to be.
No, I'm not saying there has to be, but I mean, we don't have preemptive I mean, I would hazard a guess that there are code violations happening throughout our community in different spots that are not necessarily triggering review and enforcement. But if you have a property owner who complains about another property owner, we have a process of actually filing a complaint, which triggers investigation by the code officer. Because some code violations you can't tell from the road, that the neighbor can tell, but there's no way to tell from a public right of way that something is happening. So we do have a process in Ulysses for filing a complaint. So this law is not written in its current form to state that if an event is happening, the code officer has to go investigate whether or not any animals are.
Well, when it says shall administer and enforce the provisions of this article, it kind of implies that the code officer would be aware or at least know that it was or was not happening. But I agree. I don't want to put a burden on our code
Is
enforcement.
that the same way it's written in zoning, like, where, as you're saying, is that the same way? I don't know the zoning, the language in the zoning law, but similarly, yeah.
We reserve the town has the right to enforce our own laws,
Right, yeah.
right? And so,
It doesn't make sure that, okay, on every single day, the code officer has to take a stroll through and do a checklist. It's, again, at the right, if there was a notification done.
Right, so
Similar
you're
to
relying
zoning.
on,
Yeah,
relying on
similar-
the public notify.
Yeah,
or
similar to
report.
zoning, but then there is a mechanism, should something move forward.
so, yeah, and the code officer does do inspections for activities, but I think that it's important too, to take a step back and say, this is not about the fair per se,
Right.
because this would impact every single property owner in the town of Ulysses. So I'm not suggesting that we necessarily have other activities happening on other parcels, but that doesn't preclude
I didn't
necessarily.
understand what you said. It would affect
This
every,
is, this is
every,
the fair.
would affect every other person in the town? How-
Yeah, it affect my house too, right? Like I can't have
I'm not following.
a public display, I can't have a party and have a display of, and bring a traveling shirt exotic animal.
Oh, right,
either.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Right, so I mean, so to tie to another thing, you couldn't ask for a special event permit on ag land to have a tiger show. So what I'm, so, you know, that would really be a confluence that we'd have a lot of fun public turnout, which I enjoy, so please come. But my point is this is not a law that is written that only applies to the fairgrounds property.
Right, right.
So,
It applies to
Um,
any place in the
right.
county Ulysses.
right,
It does say any enforcement officer can administer enforcement provisions, and
True.
then we list different sorts of people who could be the
Right.
enforcement officers,
True.
so.
Right, and
It
I
doesn't
want to
mean
point
that-
out that SPCA Humane Officer, Joe wrote an email. He is in favor of this as well, and he's the humane investigator that would, someone that would be responsible for enforcing this.
So I suppose it says a person duly authorized by the town board, so. we have
That
to
would be
decide
any
who
of
is
these.
Duly authorized.
Well, according to this,
But-
the town code, SPCA humane officer of the peace.
Or other person,
Police
so that
officer, yeah.
implies that all those listed are duly authorized. Yes.
Mhm.
Right, so. So it's not necessarily code enforcement officer. It has to
True.
go if there's a complaint.
You could send the humane,
SPCA,
SPCA humane
Ask
officer.
them to go and police or whatever. If it seems like a dangerous situation.
Well, let's take a straw poll in terms of who, do you want to move this to a public information session? Because if we don't have the votes, there's no point.
I'm fine with moving it to a public education system. I don't want to go in 100 loops of public
Well-
information input, more public information, more input than public hearing. I think we've gotten a lot. It's
Yeah.
posted on the web. We'll keep posting it. We'll post the public information session. We'll gather more information. I think then,
Yeah.
we can, whatever, decide to go to a public, tweak it a little or not, and go to the public hearing.
Yeah,
I
what do
think
you-
we have to have some timeline for coming
Yeah.
to some
Yeah, I agree.
closure on this.
Yeah, this is what, the third meeting that we
Yeah.
tackled this issue,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we have at a minimum 2 more,
well, just like
Right.
that.
info session and a
Right.
Hearing.
Hearing, yeah. So I think that's a lot of meetings on. one-
something that's
Yeah, I think it's been, gosh,
less than dire.
we're getting a lot of information. We've gotten a lot, the committee's done a lot of work. giving
Well,
us
and
information. The public has given us
Yeah.
input. I think that, yeah. I think if we're gonna go, we should go to the
Yeah,
next
right,
level
yeah, I agree.
and do it.
I'm fine with going to the next thing.
Public information
Yeah.
and then public hearing.
Right.
that would be the
Yeah.
process, if that's what, and so I would, out of respect for the committee, out of respect for the public, I think we go to a public education session if there's support for, getting to a spot you believe that the board collectively believes we will pass a law. Because I also don't think it's, if you're,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it's really kind of, if we move to a public education, and you're in favor of public education, it should be in the basis of it's a law that you ultimately see perhaps slightly tweaked, but ultimately could get behind. Because there's no point in doing a public education session only to turn around and say, well, we're not interested in doing this completely. So,
I agree.
Well, I mean, you could
You could have.
get
it in
so
some-
much outcry at the. public
that somebody
information
could change
session
their
that they
mind.
Yeah,
decide,
I mean,
now I'm not interested.
Right.
I'm not saying that's gonna happen.
Or,
but
or I
don't
wasn't
think you can
interested
judge
and now I
ahead of
am.
time. I think we should just go in a linear path if we're gonna go, unless. a
Yeah, I mean,
majority of
why
people
have the-
here Are just completely opposed to continuing to consider it in this path.
well, the purpose of a public education session is to educate the public, not to hear comments per se on positions, but it's to educate the public about what this is, what's being proposed.
But we'll certainly get comments at a public information session.
I
yeah.
agree, but I think that it's also, if you're going to educate the public, you're gonna educate them on the draft that you're effectively proposing.
And,
I'm
and
not saying.
we can reasonably anticipate that the Fair Board will be there to speak out against it.
They
And
already have been, yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
animal rights activists will speak out for it.
Right.
And, I mean, it's a controversial thing.
Veterinarians have come before, and they might come again.
Yeah, yeah.
And ask
Yeah,
for
it's
questions. yeah.
controversial,
Right.
yeah.
Sure. Everything's controversial.
So would you like to
Well-
schedule a public education session tonight, or do you want me to put the public education scheduling on the next meeting?
No, if we're gonna do it, let's do it.
Okay, we have a
But I-
meeting.
But I don't see the 3 votes yet.
Okay,
We should take a vote on it.
well, well, we don't need to take a vote. I'm in favor of having a public education session.
Me too.
So
Okay.
we have meetings on June 14th. We have meetings on, we have a meeting on the 28th. My,
Well, do
Person-
we have to have it when there's already another board meeting? That just seems to make the board meetings go really long and have a hard time.
well, it's usually easier for the public to attend meetings on our known schedule instead of a surprise schedule. I don't know about you guys. I have other things sometimes on other nights. It's not that we can't necessarily do one, but my recommendation was going to be doing it on a second meeting because the agendas usually are
Like a
lighter.
month from now.
Yep, and we could start it, if you wanted to do it, start it at 6:30. Could start it at 6:30 if you wanted to do it earlier.
Oh, I have, on the 28th, I have a rec partnership meeting. At 5:30.
You don't want to do it on the 14th?
Do it on
The
the
first
14th.
meetings of the month are
Uh-huh.
usually pretty heavy.
I don't-
I've got presentations scheduled for both
Okay.
the 14th and the 28th.
Then
Hmm.
let's do it the first meeting in July.
July
12th.
12th,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I have another, well, maybe I won't. Well, what time would it be? Earlier than 7?
We could do, we could start a public hearing at 6:30 or a public
Okay, well
education
then I
session.
could.
But July 12th is a town board meeting.
Well, but the rec partnership meets at 5:30 that day.
Oh, okay.
5:30 to 6:30, so I could come
Okay,
for
all right.
the hearing or
Okay.
whatever.
All right,
info
everyone
session.
good with that? July 12th?
And schedule it, and we could schedule it from 6:30 to 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Or to 7:30. I mean, I think you're gonna have,
Well, we should limit public comment,
yeah.
or we'll be here
What
all
is the
night.
rule on public comment during a public information session?
Can you cut it shorter, like 2 minutes?
Nate,
We can make whatever. rule
Nate, we
we
can
want.
set our own time limits, correct, on a public education session?
Oh, right. So it's not a public hearing. So you're not otherwise constrained by the normal limits. But if you open it up to public comment, I would definitely recommend limiting the amount of time people can speak. Yes. Long story short, yes.
But once you go to public hearing after public information session, then there's interaction with the public or not?
So in a public hearing, you as a board are not required to say anything. It is the opportunity for the public to present whatever statements or information that they want. The idea of the public information session is to formally draw a distinction between the two. And, I think Caitlin mentioned it, being affirmatively willing to answer questions at the public information session. And so that requires some dialogue back and forth, of course. And so I could see somebody saying, well, I had a question and then you answered it. And then suddenly that took up all my time. Maybe I should get more time. It's just something to think about, but there is, you can limit how long people talk for at any of these opportunities for people to publicly speak. And you can also choose to interact back and forth if you wanted to.
Okay. All right.
I think it'd be great if to do, so we're gonna do at 6:30.
Yeah.
So can I just ask one thing? One of our committee members can't be there, she's camping. So I don't, I can try to answer all the questions, but I only know the pieces that I know that I worked on and
Can she Zoom?
which, I mean, I'm
I-
gonna be
probably
in
not camping.
in Letchworth,
I
so
mean,
my office has to walk up
These
to.
campgrounds are
They
pretty
do.
I can,
sophisticated.
I can do my best to dial in. I just want to let you know that happens.
Yeah, I just wanted to, like, I can be here, but we'll zoom in.
Well, then maybe we should do it at the.
But
second.
I don't want my presence to delay the entire process, so. It just, I can
I
figure
don't
it
know
out.
what exactly you're looking for the committee to be able to, how
Right.
much you're looking for us to lead that versus you guys leading it from the board. So I guess that's a question to you guys on it a little bit.
Well, I think there are a couple of things. What I was gonna say was that I think proactively collecting questions as opposed to public instead of comments. I mean, people can always send us comments, but I think it's really getting questions answered and putting together kind of a robust Q&A in advance or FAQ in
and we can
advance
prepare
would
those
be
in
really
advance.
helpful to be able to share, I
Yeah.
think, to share with the public.
Yeah.
And maybe we could, I would be happy to work with you or Rich work with you to kind of put together some possible questions and
Yeah.
collect questions that we think the public might likely have. And then we can collect other questions from the public, ask for the other questions. And then hopefully it becomes a more of a legal question and answer that, that if we don't have that material, so that it's, because in most circumstances, it's very difficult to try and answer some questions on the fly unless you're a subject matter expert.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So,
This took me, weeks of research
Right.
to put together sort of thing, so, yeah.
so do you think out of respect also for your time, do you think that the 28th, I mean, we would want to get the FAQs probably posted as early as possible. So I think we'd want to backtrack. It would be good to have them out there. I don't know if it's possible to have them out there the week of June 13th, which would give people almost a couple of weeks to see them. But that's,
A month between.
then it would be, so that, yeah, it would give, if
Give them a
you
month.
give them a month.
Or June, our next meeting in July.
12th, right?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, absolutely. No, I was not trying to, I was in my own mind moving us to June 28th.
Oh,
So then maybe the week of, well, I think rather sooner rather than later, but trying to give them at least a few weeks for them to be posted on the website
Yeah.
yeah.
and circulate in our newsletter. Because I think that we're gonna see some reoccurring questions
Yeah.
and concerns or comments. But then we could share that with the public. So if we could, that would give you also, because I do appreciate that it takes time, a few weeks to do those kinds of things also.
Yeah, so you're thinking just looking for the 13th to have kind of a FAQ of.
I would say even actually, because I was off by my weeks, even by the week of the 20th, in there.
June 20th.
Yeah,
You want us to compile an FAQ and then you'll send questions? for the
so
public
what
section?
what I was proposing is that I'd be happy to work with you, Rich. I would
Yeah.
assume too, if anybody else on the board has questions they would like answered, right? Then we could put, that could be actually distributed. So that would, and we could work with you on questions over the next week, I would say. So
Yeah.
then questions could
Well,
be
and
answered.
hopefully we've answered a lot of the board's
Yeah.
questions, like,
Right.
hopefully your answer to the question, but if you've heard questions and you didn't know exactly the answer to them, please send them to us and we can help.
Yeah.
Look at that a bit more, but hopefully. We've
Yeah.
answered a lot of your questions.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
doable.
Well, I think it's actually less of me asking my questions. I feel like my questions have been answered, but
Yeah.
trying to anticipate what a
Right.
public question might be.
Exactly. So yeah, if you've heard questions from the public, and you're like, yeah, I know that,
And we can also
So-
collect questions from, I'm looking at my calendar again, we can also collect questions from the public. And so say, they could submit questions through, say, the 10th of June, that would be a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Not that they couldn't ask questions at a public education session, but it would also provide an opportunity for very specific questions to be asked, so.
Okay.
June 10th. Actually, why don't we make that Mondays are sometimes easier, June 13th, because nobody wants to do it on a Friday.
So can we make that a motion for the public information section to set a date, so I have it
Yep.
really clear in the record?
I move that we set July 12th at 6:30 for a public education session on the proposed law titled a local law to prohibit the display of wild and or exotic animals in a traveling animal act. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd like to entertain the idea of putting a time on it, like a time window on it. like a public information session from 6:30 to
Just 7:30.
7 or 7:15 or 7:30. Because I
Yeah, I
really
agree.
feel like open-ended meetings, when we have all this other business to do, if we cannot consider putting meetings on other days, like the board has always done, but okay, this is a different board, maybe there's a different policy, then I feel like we need to have some time limit that,
Yeah.
that maybe people are aware of going into it.
Yeah.
So, well, I'd like to add that to the motion that
Well,
establishes.
no more than an hour.
It could be
that it's
dangerous
down
though.
to-
Oh, because if people don't get a chance to
Yeah.
speak.
Well, maybe we'll have like a
You know.
speaker sign-in sheet and, once we get to that time limit, 45 minutes or an hour.
Or we could just
That's
say
it.
that will.
I mean, that's
that
like
will last
60,
No more than,
We can
that's
lower,
30 people.
yeah.
we could lower the 3 minutes to 2 minutes.
Well, it's lowering the 3 minutes to 2.
What do you
It's
mean?
30 people in an hour. So
Right.
Right, but if they bring up, if each side brings a lot of people, we need to be willing to listen to them.
I just think that we should make the agenda shorter if we can for that day.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to staying here all night either, but
I know, no, I
they're the ones that elected us and we
agree,
It's
I
our-
agree with you.
duty to listen to them.
Of
Yeah.
course, I'm not
Right.
saying that, but if we can't get other work done, it's also our duty to do that. And
Right.
so if we have to have it all in one meeting, again, you can vote it
Propose.
down, but I'm proposing that there is a time limit.
I think we should
Proposing
just make the
overtime.
agenda a little light that night. So if we need more time, we have it.
Well, I mean, we can make a motion to do it till 7:30 and we can, at
We
that
can, we
point,
can
we
reevaluate.
can reevaluate it. if
So
the
say
board-
6:30 to 7:30.
Right, and, we also have 2 public comment periods where people
Right.
could take advantage of that also.
And we've
Um,
already had 2 meetings where people have come and talked. to
Right.
us.
yeah, and there hasn't been that much new information imparted by
Right.
anyone. Well, except for
We
this
took care of the
ag thing.
bison. We took-
Oh, I think in the meantime, that is the question. We should try to
Yeah, we should
answered
get an
maybe by
answer.
Which is
Nate
what?
If we need it,
Which,
which is,
which
That,
question?
that this is,
That
the
the
fairgrounds is
suggested-
governed by a different law than,
yeah, that anything happening on the fairgrounds is, that has to be is
Right.
exempt
Oh,
from
okay.
anything else we do.
So Nate, can you hear me?
well, he's
Nate,
there
oh, yes.
twice.
So he's moving from his phone to his computer. I do this all the time, irritate people. But Nate, so what was proposed was that the agricultural, we were informed in public comment that the fairgrounds may perceive themselves as, because they are an agricultural fair, to not be, that this local law would not apply to them. So you don't need to answer that right now, but we're gonna need that answered.
I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a
And there, I
question.
also asked them to provide us with whatever feedback they get from New York State. So I would accept the friendly amendment to curtail the public education session from 6:30 to 7:30 on July 12th. And I will do my best to make it an effective, efficient meeting for the rest of it.
Okay. No problem.
So there's a second. Are you in favor of the second? And so any further discussion? All those in favor of the public education session? Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, and let's touch base and we
Yeah,
can move
and
forward.
if you do need any sort of, more, if we get the FAQ kind of put together by the 13th, or the 20th kind of thing, and then there is more desire for something, let us know, just we have a little bit of time to
Yeah.
prepare. There's, information is different than public comment, so I don't know
Right.
exactly what, this is new territory, so what exactly you're looking for support.
Sure, that's great. Well, we can continue that conversation offline. I'm happy to participate in that.
Cool, so that sounds great.
All right, thank you very much. Have a
night.
good evening. Okay. Moving on, I was hoping that our trustee finance committee members could just give us an update on, I know you guys have been
Yeah,
doing work on the benefits and the personnel policy, as particularly for elected officials, and so I thought it would be great to hear from you guys and.
so,
Guys, you wanna share?
so Blitzy went through the whole personnel policy as it benefits as it relates to elected officials, and really took out the term elected official in many spots, where it would have been confusing and it's all over the place. And basically everything to do with elected officials, their pay and their benefits is going to be in one place in the personnel policy. Right?
Right, and, there were a couple of places in the policy where it referred to elected official sick time, vacation, that's been struck. And so when you look in the personnel policy, all of the information on elected officials is in one concise area, like 2 paragraphs. I don't know exactly how
Yeah,
long, but it's not very long. And, basically elected officials don't have vacation or sick time. I mean, that's something that's, absolute, so,
So it's been.
they
the
take
law.
time off when they need
That's
to.
right. They don't
So-
have a defined job description.
Yeah. Yeah,
Excellent. So, I mean, I know that's been something that we've wanted collectively to get done. When do you think you'll have a draft ready for the board to?
well, I don't know, should we have a draft of each section or?
It's however you want us to review and approve it. That's, I mean, nobody's abusing it now, but we obviously want to make sure that
Right.
as we move forward that.
Well, I think by the second meeting in June, we should be able to have.
Just let me know and I'll make
Well,
sure
we
it's on
have,
the
we're
agenda.
having, don't we meet every other,
I don't know.
we meet every other week, I thought.
Right, so we could, yeah. We'll have something.
Okay, just let me know.
Yeah, we'll
Just
have
give me a heads
something.
up when you want to bring it to the board. But thank you very much. that can be tedious work.
Seems like even if it's part of it, if you have some.
Yeah, we could bring
Start
some.
on it.
Yeah,
Check, be more than one section. I think that's how it goes.
okay.
Have you guys run it by Scott and Chris as well?
Hmm, No, I don't think so.
There are no real
What-
changes in it. It's just putting it in the right place.
Right, yeah, I get it, just to see, because they're,
Yeah, there,
those 2 positions are actually have been traditionally more stable.
true.
So it looks like more of like a career, so just to get it from their perspective of what it looks like or how
Yeah,
it would affect them.
yeah, when she. It's fine.
Because the one time it would affect them is like at retirement, because many times people use their sick time, to use it.
Right,
as
but
a
there is
thing
no
for-
accrued
There's
sick
no
time
accrual
elected
for
officials.
elected officials, so,
And they know that, everyone knows that. Right, Carissa?
Sorry, what?
You know, there's no accrued sick time for elected officials.
Right.
Yes, nobody is doing it.
Well-
It's, but our policy is not clear.
and it does, actually, some of the things that we looked at did define more clearly retirement for elected officials as well. And the types of benefits they would be entitled to as retirees.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to bringing it back then. The next up is ARPA funding allocation for the phase 1 of the IT cyber upgrades. So there's a handout. This the cybersecurity and IT modernization budget estimate was provided in the packet. And I printed off copies for most of you. It looks like this.
Any quick question?
Yes, so just as a preface to this, this was reviewed both by the IT subcommittee. I asked Linda to join us in this conversation if she's available to. It was reviewed by both the IT subcommittee as well as the finance committee. And this is the kind of the blown out version of what we looked at a couple meetings ago when we were looking at potential allocations for ARPA funding. And so this resolution would be earmarking this specifically, this amount of funds for addressing our cybersecurity and IT modernization needs. So did you have questions?
Yeah, so
Yes.
is the 46.5, is that strictly for a document?
Yes, and it's paying the consultants to come in and actually do the assessment.
Okay.
Yeah. Linda, was there anything you'd like to say about the plan in particular? Or bring our attention to anything?
No, I didn't have any. I think it looks pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we did talk that there's something, was it you, Carissa, that brought that up? Something in the code that needs to be replaced? Or maybe it's the code on our website.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, right, yes.
like that's
Our website
that's a
language.
critical thing because the support for that was going away or.
No.
No, yeah. It
No,
was,
I'm-
I know what you're talking about. Linda can, yeah.
yeah,
Linda,
I
go
think it's more to do with trying to get us standardized and to make sure that everybody has controlled access to the systems. You know, we could exist the way we are today, but my understanding, and I didn't have an opportunity to get involved with the conversations on that, so I'm not sure of all the details for doing it. It's easy to do. Well, not easy, but it can be done and we should go ahead and do that. But so it would be that everything that we have, your emails, all that, and the addresses would be .gov as opposed to whatever they are today. Most of you are using Gmail.
.ny.us, which is, yeah.
Yeah, right. You've got it better than I do.
Trying to spell it out for people. You learn to memorize it.
Right.
Mary, you're right. Yes, there's part of the, behind the scenes code that makes our website work that is going to become outdated. So we need to redo that section of the website.
Oh.
So it's,
Okay.
it's a good time to move it in the new direction.
Yes.
Since you're talking about that, I don't know if that's the right term, but has the site been checked for like ADA accessibility? I think,
That is on our radar.
It
Okay.
is, but no, it hasn't.
okay, yeah, I don't want to, one thing at
Yeah.
a time, but
Yeah,
Or a usability on a phone too. That's
yeah, there's
always-
some
there's
legal thing, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like when people are looking, to make sure your place is ADA accessible, they're checking websites for the same thing.
something.
Oh, who is?
Hearing or seeing impaired or something, and colors,
Yeah.
so something.
So there's a legal requirement now for what kind of websites? Do you know, Michael?
I can find out more for you and
Be great,
get
thank
that to you. But there's
Yeah,
yeah,
we should take a look at that and see what, at least know. I wasn't familiar with it, but that's because I don't, haven't dealt with those things. I don't know. Carissa, did you know anything about it?
I don't, but I'm adding it to our list.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with it as being a requirement, but I do know that I do online education work, and there's definitely a push to making sure everything is accessible for different learning capabilities and having recordings and things like that. So we do have, as part of this is just looking at phase one, and the phase one is intended to really nail a lot of the issues the comptroller's report indicated. So that's really what this is. But that doesn't mean that we didn't recognize that there are things that as part of our entire IT and cybersecurity process, that just because the comptroller didn't call them out doesn't mean that we don't recognize that things need to change, and our website being one of them ultimately. So it's in I believe the third phase that we're looking at an overhaul of our website to address a number of things. But this is really for the first. This is just for the first phase of
And
allocation.
this 53,000 keeps sitting in my craw. I can't believe that there aren't templates that people that have used over and over again to do this very thing.
It just
Seems like a
little
lot of
on
money,
the high
right?
side.
No?
I guess I have a related question, which is, we're, I guess, looking at approving the whole 76,000, but it seems like the second two things, don't they depend on the evaluation that we get, how we would implement them? So don't we need to get that first and then know how much? I mean, then we would know how much we were spending there. So I'm just confused about why we would approve the other two items above the assessment one first before we know.
can we take a step
what we
back?
need.
Can we take a step back quickly? We're not actually approving each individual item. Right now, this resolution is simply approving earmarking
No, I
this
understand.
amount. So each individual thing would have to come back before the board for, that through the procurement process.
Oh, okay.
So, but did you have something else that you wanted to say on that?
No, I was just going to say that Roxanne's correct, that we need, I think the plan was not to do any of those till we got the strategic plan pulled together first and make sure we're consistent and not doing some things that we'll have to get rid of later on.
I think the other reason, this is an expensive thing, but I think what I think is very clear in terms of when we have been talking with Greg Potter from Tompkins County, who's been incredibly gracious with his time and assistance. I don't think that every community benefits as much as we have from that. I think it's a situation where there's nobody on staff who has the capacity to do this analysis. Nobody has the technological expertise. And unfortunately, I think we are where we are because of the homegrown piecemeal approach that has been taken over the last 15 years. And not because I think anybody made any poor choices along the way. I think it was a natural progression. And we thought we were doing, everything was fine. And I think the comptroller's report really threw into sharp relief that we're behind the times and we need to address this. And
So we're
so,
gonna put this out as an RFP?
absolutely. Yeah, and honestly, if we can do it for $15,000, I would be delighted. I have no desire to spend any more money than we have to get the services that we need. And we're working with Tompkins County on the RFP draft so that we're getting precisely Greg Potter is much more a subject area expert than we are. And so we're working to make sure that we're getting that we're getting something that's going to benefit the public,
Okay.
benefit the town. So this resolution is to simply allocate up to
76,000.
yes, the 76,000. I think I swapped them around. I apologize. I swapped them around in the resolution. So I was like, wait a minute, it's more than $8,000. So it'll show up as the second resolution on your resolution page. I apologize, or the third actually, because we approved the agenda already. It's allocating up to $76,086 of our share of the state and local fiscal recovery funds for phase 1 of the town's cybersecurity and IT modernization plan. I would move that.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. That motion carries. Thank you. And then moving backwards, the resolution we discussed the anoid bags that have to be purchased. We discussed that at a previous meeting and the review, and they be replaced for Water District 3. We discussed that at the April 26th meeting. And this resolution allocates that funding to come out of our allocation. Currently, we have the quote is coming in around 6,800. We asked for up to 8,000 just because it'll be done in July. I forget the
July
date.
18th.
July 18th. Thank you. We don't think it's going to hit $8,000. Obviously, we'd be happy to give money back, but we just didn't want to cut ourselves short and have to come back for another resolution.
It's the first resolution.
It's the first resolution on the page. Rich, I'm sorry.
There.
Michael, do you want, I'm happy to move it.
I'll second.
And any further comment? I will say that we had a very good Water District 3 meeting. Michael, I appreciated what you brought to it about the bags and the process.
Explain what they are
So,
again,
so
because it was a while ago.
yeah, the tank is a big metal structure with an underground pipe connected to it. And so what it will do with the, being connected to the ground, it'll gradually corrode. And so then there's an anode field next to the tank. And so then there's bags that are attached to that. And so they degrade, they degrade over time. And because they're sacrificial, obviously, so they wanted to use up those rather than the steel pipe in the tank.
Okay.
And so that's, I don't know if it's every 5 years or something, but it's not very often. And so statewide aqua store will come in and do that while they're doing the tank. Maintenance and cleaning.
So does that have to dig it up every time?
Yeah, it's a small, there's a few bags in the field.
Hmm.
So it's fairly common. Like we have them on campus for our chill water system.
Yeah, okay.
We have several of them around campus or the substations have them and stuff. So anytime there's a big metal structure like that, and it's fairly common thing.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Any other questions? Wonderful, then call for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on. I included this, Roxanne, just to see if there were any updates you had on the stretch code. I didn't mean that you had to give us any updates, but just in case.
Well, I mean, what I have is that at the last meeting, the board thought it was a good idea to continue moving forward, trying to get information on this, and thought that since the village was also working on this action, I don't know, Mary, if you've heard anything further at village meetings about it? but-
Well, they had the meeting last night. Tom Meyer was there. He talked a little bit about the stretch code. They have to do a seeker resolution. Well, first they have to have the law. And I think I don't actually remember if it's the next meeting, they might be doing the seeker.
Well,
And
anyway,
propose the law.
yeah,
But there were some interesting things that Tom brought up. One had to do with, will these apply to additions? And in the actual code, it says that, a substantial addition or some kind of word like that, that's very kind of vague. So, Tom apparently, or the village has the power to define that term to be more specific. So Tom thought that like an addition that added like 50% more onto your house, the square footage of it.
That's a big.
Um,
Is that what you said, Mary?
well, there's a lot of municipalities that have done this, so we could also find
Yeah.
out from them what they do for that definition.
Yeah.
At any rate, I did reach out because we had thought maybe, since it sounded like the village was moving more slowly and might want to join us in a public information meeting if we had one. I reached out to Ben Carver, who I was advised is the person spearheading it there, but I haven't heard back from him yet, but it's a busy time
Yeah.
of year for people who are dealing with the end of the semester at Cornell. And so we talked about having Gina and Lou Vogel there again to help answer some of these questions. That's a question, I guess, that we haven't heard yet that we can try to get the answer to in advance. What is that? And how are people using it? So that's a good thing. So anyway, I can continue to work on that, even if they don't want to do it. If the board wants to do it, we can organize a time to have that and, have them come and be here. We've got a bunch of questions. And I gave you a list of the ones that I found the answers that you had before. The state has an FAQs. I can combine all those together.
Yeah, good. I do think it's important that whatever we define, if we define substantial, then that the village and town kind of use the same square footage or definition, otherwise people can go nutty. In terms of keeping track of who's in what. And so, yeah, I think it'd make it easier for residents and people building to keep straight.
Another question they had for Tom was, how much additional work do you think this would create for you?
Yeah.
And he said it would be in the single digits, but, in the town, in the village, they built like 2 new houses last year.
Right.
And maybe like 1 this year. So, it's not a lot of construction,
Right, well,
but it
again,
would be more, I would imagine, in the town.
so I talked to someone from Newfield and someone from Dryden. And which were in between in terms of what they have coming into that office. And so I could get solid numbers from both of them on how they feel like it's
That
impacting
would be good.
their time. And another thing I just want to mention is that there's currently 3 pieces that relates to this. three pieces of legislation in the state Senate and the Assembly that are promoting renewable heating, including cooling, excuse me, including one of them, which is called the Advanced Building Appliance and Equipment Standards Act. They're actively being discussed right now in the Assembly and the Senate. And that the goal of this law is that it reduces energy use and aligns the current state energy code with the CLCPA to improve energy efficiency standards for construction, rehabilitation, and operation of new buildings, products, and appliances. So I haven't had a chance to read through that law yet. I can send you all
Yeah,
the
I'd like
link
to
to
see
the
that.
summaries, but it sounds like to me, this is coming.
It's coming,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it behooves Ulysses to, get ready and try
yeah.
to take the plunge and deal with it, because we're going to have to deal with it.
And Mark is okay with this?
Mark will do whatever we decide to do. I mean, for him, it becomes you
It's
have
part
to
of
look
the-
it up.
right.
He'll have to,
Right.
as he does everything
Right.
else.
Right.
I cannot speak for him, but it was my impression that it would not create much work after it goes into effect, other than the education we want to make sure he gets
Right.
prior to it going into effect, and just
Right.
budgeting the time for
Right,
it.
and they have a lot of education training, and they have technical experts to help qual,
Right.
and there are people like the code officers in Dryden who have been doing this for almost a year now,
Mhm.
that he could get advice from. Mark went to a same training meeting, information meeting a while ago, and I reached out to ask him some more input, but he was really busy, so I haven't directly spoken to him, but I'm happy to do so, or we can have him come to that meeting, which would be great if he could, schedule it when he could come too.
Yeah. yeah.
So that he can ask questions and all.
Hmm.
So, does the board want to try to go forward with having this?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
And I presume that if Mark is going to come, he prefers it to be during the day, it sounded like, when I asked him if he could come to the other one, that, Lou and when I told him it was happening, and he said, well, it's hard for him to do night meetings because of his family, and also, I just need like some guidance on when to try to
Well, and if
schedule it.
we could do it through Zoom also.
Right, and I also think that it also becomes a question of wanting to schedule in advance. I mean, I know as someone who has children, we both have 4 children. If I have more advance notice, it's much more easier to flex the schedule. So a month in
Right.
advance or whatever,
Well,
I think.
this wasn't in advance for sure. It wasn't the day of, but I just am trying to figure out when, like, what sort of time.
If we do it by Zoom, I'm very flexible.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
don't,
pick
I
a
don't have
couple.
much limitation.
Okay, well, I guess I could, like,
Pick 2 or 3, 2 dates and. we'll
Yeah.
pick
Right.
one.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
like the late afternoon or something, do that instead of an evening? What, I don't know.
I'm
What
totally
anybody
flexible.
Prefers.
Well, Zoom, if there's gonna be 3 of us after June 9th, the Zoom becomes, the
Oh,
majority has to be in
oh,
person.
it does.
oh, really?
Yes,
Unless they change it again.
unless they change it, unless they extend it,
Sure.
which you never know, but I'm like mentally preparing, even though pandemic numbers are rising
Oh, well,
yet
then
again.
if we're gonna be in person later, either 8 AM or late afternoon.
I suspect 8 AM.
8
would
AM might
hard
be
for-
good.
8 AM works. for
I
me,
can try it, but I don't know that I'll be able to get like. Blue and-
Oh,
and
that's
8
right.
AM. Or. late
Maybe you could
afternoon,
get
you said?
them
Late
by
afternoon.
Zoom.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll see what they've got and then
Yeah,
Okay,
do a survey monkey. or
days
something.
of the week,
I'm out, yeah, yeah,
none, nobody has any preference things that.
but-
No.
Not Wednesday if it's 8 AM.
I did, it would be hard to read, but I will try it.
Well, maybe just a
Well, and did you want it to be sort of apps that will be a public meet, like, so the public knows and can come and listen?
yeah, I mean,
In
I
this case,
think
8 AM might not be the. best
during the
time.
day, it's gonna be really hard for
Yeah.
most working people to attend,
Well,
so
that's
I mean,
right,
that
like
becomes
the-
an evening.
The very,
Yeah,
early, moving it to the early.
like
evening or
5:30 or
something.
something.
But I think 8
And
AM
if
would
it's
be really
recorded
hard.
too, we can post it up.
Yeah,
Right, so that's what I'm just unclear on, what level of, what, do you guys want it to be sort of like the one we already had, and, or do you want to advertise it? And I would definitely like to see Mark come,
Mhm.
maybe Tom would come if he wanted to, if that was helpful to him, and then members of the public as they could, so. That was my thought, but whatever you think is the highest priority time.
Unless we put
target.
it on the June 12th meeting.
I know. I, again, will
You
state
don't want
my
to do that.
concern that we just
That's,
file meeting on meeting
Yeah.
all at the same night.
Well, whatever.
Well, how long are you anticipating the session to be? Is there
Whatever, however.
An hour?
you want.
I mean, we've
An hour, I
already
would
asked,
think.
we've
I-
already have met with these
Right.
people.
I thought that
So I
you
don't-
wanted it to be an opportunity that was advertised for the public to come. and
Right, we
listen.
said we
Is
were
that
gonna do a
wrong?
public. something.
Oh, yeah, we need to do a public, if this is standing in for the public, full public education, then the priority needs to be to have it be publicly
Right,
accessible
yeah, I
for
think
people
it
to
is, yeah,
attend.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think
we
the
already
evening,
had an information meeting, so for us.
We did. right.
yeah, but for the public,
Yeah,
we'd want to have it at a time that would be convenient for the public, which might not be convenient for Mark.
but I think if we schedule it far enough in advance, we can indicate, but Mark could also attend remotely. He doesn't
Yeah,
have to be
that's
attend in
true.
person.
Yeah.
And so
okay.
I would think, I hate to say it, but I think an evening meeting would probably be the best for the public to be able to
Yeah.
ask questions.
Yeah.
Because I think the recording, I'm a big fan, we're actually getting good views on YouTube, I'm happy to say, of our meetings. But I think sometimes questions, if someone had a chance to actually ask a question, would be as,
Yeah,
but we could do the other thing too, is that if you have questions, you're not able to attend, you can submit them also. We can,
All right, I'll talk to.
Can that
them and
session be
see.
recorded?
Maybe I'll ask
So
Mark.
Mhm.
when
Krista
he
might be able to
thinks
say,
he might be able-
here's
I did try
specifically
before.
this
And if you
presentation.
get a
Yeah,
time, I
absolutely.
could always.
Yeah, maybe we could do
get
that
touch
as well
with
and
Tyler
say,
and
this is what
see
we're
if-
thinking.
Right,
of
I
doing.
mean, I'm happy to do that too. I
Good
started
idea.
trying to work jointly
Yeah,
with
that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
the village and then
Uh-huh.
Always helps.
didn't
well,
really.
Ben was just graduating.
No, I know, but it's been, you
Yeah.
know, pieced on, so we never got quite to that, but I think it'd be great. All right,
Is that it for that one?
yeah, I'll talk, so the next step, I will talk to Mark and see if he's got time preferences and evenings, days and stuff like that, and we'll try to talk to Lou and Gina and we'll try to see if Tom can come. Then we'll put it out with enough advertising for the public.
sounds great.
And
Number
we'll make
six.
FAQ.
What?
Number 6.
That's sort of condensed. the
Yes,
Stuff we know to date.
excellent.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, let me know when we finalize the date and I'll make sure it's on the agenda of whatever our next
Or
meeting is.
I'll
to-
run it by the board first,
Yeah.
so, I mean, obviously.
Sounds good. Excellent. Okay, we need to move into an executive session. I'd like to invite our attorney to attend with us. This executive session is related to a specific appointed person. We will not be taking any action in this meeting and we will return to the full meeting afterwards. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor? Aye.
Movie or-
no, they-
They're
we're going
moving.
in.
To a specific appointed person. We took no action and we are resuming our regularly scheduled regular meeting on May 24th, 2022. And we are kicking off our next item on our agenda, which is new business item A, supervisor approval to sign contracts with youth employment sites. So for many number of years, we have been working with, this will be on page 2 of the resolutions. It's the top resolution. We have been working with Rural Youth Services to help first-time employees gain job experience. And the way this works is that we have money allocated in the budget for it. And Ethan works with local businesses to find sites where these individuals can work. Sometimes they've worked at the town of Ulysses, but they work at local businesses, and the salary associated with the individuals is paid for through our budgeting process. But what we've never done is actually have contracts with the local employment providers. And this is something that was called out as very necessary, both from legal counsel and also from our insurance broker or insurance providers. But this was just something that hadn't been done previously, and we want to make sure we're doing it appropriately in the future. So this resolution, we don't have any contracts yet to go into place with anybody. And basically it's Nate has a draft contract that could you speak to a little bit to what we're effectively doing?
Right, so the draft contract lays out a number of items that the town and the employer are specifically going over, and I'm just pulling up the actual language of it. Oh, golly. So I'll walk you through it a little more specifically.
I will note there's a typo in the first whereas, it's youth workers. We're not only hiring one this summer, but youth workers. That was a typo on my part, so note that for the resolution itself. Ms. Nate's pulling it up.
Sorry, Caitlin, I thought it was on the town's website, so I'm just pulling it from the email.
No, yeah, Michelle emailed, we just sent the draft in. I think she sent the draft in yesterday.
I apologize, I'm off the ball right now.
So the local employers pay that we sort of get, we get them people, the town.
So we
This
actually,
program assists.
No, we pay.
no, we pay
Oh.
for the, this, the.
It's
the
part
youth
of the
workers.
youth program,
So,
the youth
all right, so
budget.
contracts with them.
Yeah,
Is it 14 and up or something?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
yep, and
when you
it's,
get working papers.
Right.
Yep.
Then you're
Yeah.
eligible.
and you get, and it really is geared towards somebody who's never had a job
Right,
before.
and it's in the youth budget.
It's in the youth
Yeah.
budget, yeah, so this,
Right.
so these
We've been doing
contracts,
it For a while.
we've been doing it for a long time, we just
Oh, yeah.
apparently never signed contracts with the employers.
Oh,
before.
My
We
kids
never
were
did.
in that
I know,
program. They're
mine
like
was
30,
too. I know.
33 now.
Exactly. So,
Well, it's
yeah.
a great program, so you
I
guys
know.
know what we're trying to do is good stuff, right? And-
I was just like, is this something different?
No, it's the
Okay,
same thing,
Got it.
it's the same thing, it doesn't encourage any more.
Yeah, right.
Still here.
Do we need to move it or?
So basically, if, hold on, I was gonna see if I could pull it up while he's talking.
I have it right here. This is-
What's he looking for?
Caitlin, I'm actually having trouble finding it.
Okay, what I would approve, and we can add on a whereas that it's approved by, obviously, I'm not gonna sign anything our lawyer hasn't approved. If you want to add on a resolved that, as approved by the attorney, the town's attorney, we could do that. But basically, this is just, you're giving me permission to sign a contract with the places of employment, that they are basically going to provide a place for the individual to work, and we're providing the funding associated with it as already previously budgeted. It's not incurring any additional money.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. So next up, and I have a couple tweaks to this. So the next up is that this is, it was timely that we had a water district 3 meeting because we talked about this. I mostly listened, but we talked about it collectively today. Is authorizing the town to enter into bulk water sales with outside users. This is a contract, in this particular case would be being made with Dick Bumpy and Bumpy's, right, it's Bumpy's, what's the full? title?
Bumpy, I love Bumpy.
Bumpy's Lawn Care.
Bumpy's Lawn Care, thank you. And it would be to sell him bulk water. It's actually to our benefit, right? Can you explain why it's great for us to sell water? Because I can't.
Because it flushes up.
Yeah, because he was gonna put the meter for it down on Jacksonville Road by hydrant 60, so just help move some more water down there. Keep the coordination up.
Good, so move. Let's-
So, but so in number 9, one thing that did have to be added to it, so number 9 item, and so after the request, it says the contract is contingent upon the agreement of the town of Ithaca to provide the bulk water requested, per the October 30th, 2003 water service agreement. So I have to get approval basically from the town of Ithaca that they're okay with us selling the water that they are providing to us.
Yeah, it's in there.
Is that new?
No, it's been in the
Yeah,
original
but
agreement.
we sold bulk water. I don't think. we did
Willie's
that before.
water is getting
I
all
think we
of
got
it.
permission.
You got
Did
it.
we? Every
Yeah.
time?
Oh, yeah?
Okay.
Really
That's
good.
why it's
Just
Bumpy's.
like
now.
to go into a contract with him.
Right,
Well, Bumpy
okay.
was
I didn't
doing it
know we
before
did that
Willie died.
before, but that's, I mean, that's, this is all like making things
Exactly.
much more trackable, which is, I think, a great thing.
Well, and Krista brought this
Yeah.
one and it made it much smoother
Yeah.
and just to pull the boards, it's just
Yeah.
to drop to the
It
board's
used to be
attention.
Very difficult to track and it
Yeah.
created a giant mess, so. it's
Okay,
really
so
good.
what do we need? to do?
There's I just wanted to call your attention to that we're charging a rate at 1.1 times the rate. And that was the rate that was established at the organizational meeting. That's the bulk rate amount. So I have a motion to move this contract.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Excellent. Excellent work. Okay. On a less happy note, the next item up is requesting, it was listed as requesting a traffic study. I would like to amend this slightly to request a highway safety and traffic studies. And this is for the stretch of Route 96 between Crumbs Corners and Iredell. If you'd be very familiar with this, because this is the part where the bridge was redone.
Right.
And
terrible.
it's terrible, but even without the bridge being terrible, that
It's
intersection,
terrible.
there was a horrible accident on May
Yeah,
5th at the
yeah.
intersection. And Michelle had the very good idea. And so kudos to her. She's not listening, but if you're listening, Michelle, in the future, thank you for bringing this it was a good idea. I actually reached out to the village and reached out to EMS to see if they had any feedback on this particular stretch of road. The reason we're asking for both a resident requested a speed study, but because of the severity of the issues at those intersections and that stretch of 96, I've bumped it up. I want to bump it up to a highway safety study. But this is what came from EMS. From Joel Fay, who's the Chief of Emergency Medical Services for the village. He said, "Thank you for allowing our comments. There are two parts to the EMS side. The first is ambulance travel over this section. Ambulances are forced to significantly reduce speeds to about 25 to 30 miles an hour and turn on our hazards because of the condition of that bridge. Travel without the reduced speed causes significant discomfort to patients and can complicate care. Staff report, quote, it's like providing medical care on a roller coaster. There have been reports of near misses with the ambulance as a result of the speed reduction. The second part comes from a community discussion over the past year. We have heard of small vehicles or motorcycles not being visible when traveling over the new culvert. I'm unsure of the truth of this. People believe the new stretch is lower and they're unable to see the smaller vehicles. The other potential hazard is the stop sign at Crumbs Corners, west side of 96. Due to the preceding knoll, drivers have historically blown this sign when crossing 96. So-
My understanding was from
Weren't they gonna
Nancy
fix
that they were gonna redo it this year.
That's what I thought.
Well, because this is two parts. So one is that there's a problem with the bridge or a problem with the
Right.
culvert or perceived problem, and definitely the surfacing. The other is that intersection is
Right.
just a wretched intersection of Crumbs Corners and 96. And it was a request like this with a speed study or with a highway safety study that ultimately in a letter from the supervisor's office from a previous supervisor, they ended up getting the flashing light on Perry City,
Right.
which has absolutely reduced violence,
Yeah.
vehicular violence since the flashing light went in. So we're hoping that somebody else comes and looks at it because it's obviously
Yeah.
crashes are happening. And
So if I could make an amendment to that,
sure.
to me, the danger is on Crumbs Corners.
Mhm.
There's a knoll on the road and it's a 55-mile-an-hour road. And so and that's what I think happened because I was there right after it happened. And it looked like somebody, and it had just rained. And so I don't know for sure because I didn't see it, but if you go down, go east on Crumbs Corners, there's a big knoll on the road and you can't see. I'm familiar with it and I've been surprised sometime coming up on 96 because it gets narrower and then the sight line is really short.
So unfortunately,
And that's a county road.
oh, it is.
Yes.
And we have actually had a request for a speed reduction on Crumbs Corners and it
But I
came
think that
back.
was on the east side, wasn't it? The lake side?
No, I thought it was on the other side.
Yeah, I think it was on the lake side, but the sight lines that I'm talking about is on I'm calling it
So
the
it'd be like the,
west side,
Right.
Before
No,
96.
like the-
West of 96.
Yeah.
Well, that's Sheffield west of 96. Does it
Isn't it-
come-
Does it change names there?
yeah, it does.
Okay. so
One side is
side.
Sheffield, the other
Yeah, the
side.
Sheffield side is where I thought
Yeah,
that
that's
the
what I
last
thought.
request was. I'm talking about the Crumbs Corner side with the knoll on the road.
Okay,
That would be perhaps an additional request to the county.
okay.
Because we're talking about the knoll in the road on 96.
Well, no, Caitlin's talking about the roller coaster when the,
Right,
with
that's on
the.
But
96.
the EMS is actually referring, I
When
think,
they
to the
did
Knoll
fix
you're
the
talking
bridge.
about also.
Right.
He's saying it's two
Right.
parts,
Right.
yeah. So how would you like to amend, Chris, were you looking
So
to
we
clarify?
had a request in 2020 for Crumbs Corners Road between Route 96 and Perry City Road.
And that was
Oh,
rejected.
Okay,
They did,
was that
they,
to the county? That would have been to the county though.
it went-
Goes to the
it
State,
went to the
Yeah.
state,
goes to DOT, doesn't it?
yeah,
So
and
would Jeff deal with that?
so basically what happened is that we did the request for the speed study in 2000 or 2020, I'm sorry. It went to the county duly sent it on, approved it
Huh.
to go further to the state, and the state came back to us, 6 weeks ago? And declined to make any alterations.
Mm.
So speed studies have a reputation of not
Right.
working, and so that's why in this instance, we were looking to, go to a heightened highway safety study.
Worth a try?
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay, I move it.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I didn't ask if there's any further comments. Okay.
Mary that time.
No beating Mary.
She's been fast tonight.
Did you say there was an amendment to that?
No, I backed off.
No
on that.
amendment.
It would-
Okay.
It would have just muddied things up.
And, and then next up is the MOU with the town of Ithaca for code enforcement assistance. There's a resolution, it's a final resolution, or second to last resolution before the minutes. But you had a separate page that was an MOU. There's one item that needs to be corrected. This MOU is for the town of Ithaca to provide temporary assistance in code enforcement dealing with a conflict of interest. And the amendment I would like to make, or that's a clarification, because there's basically a gap in the general section. Item number 1, it says the town of Ulysses confers on the Ithaca code officer any authority that has been conferred on the Ulysses code enforcement officer, and it should be pursuant to New York State General Municipal Law, section 199-0.
119 -0.
Well, okay, well, there you go. Thank you. 119.
Oh, instead of a zero,
Yeah, sure.
Letter O.
like an alpha.
Oh, is
is
it
an
like, oh my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
it's
O is an
after-
O, my God, yes.
Okay, 119. Thank you. So my amendment needs an amendment, but that was the only amendment. And so they have a flat rate of how much they charge. They charge $34.67 per hour. I accept if there are any questions, or if there are, that I would accept a motion to move this presented. Second, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Was
Okay,
okay, that's the resolution is approving that. Okay,
yes.
Something else, okay.
And then we're moving on to the Climate Action Council draft scoping.
Right, so originally when I'd asked about this, I had intended to like make a little bit more formal of a summary of comments the one that you saw that Bob talked off of, they're on the 2-page handout, basically, but making it look a little more formal and writing a brief resolution to go with it so the board could consider whether you wanted to submit comments to the state as a town. And so I had a thing happen that I took up a lot of my time and I couldn't do it. And so I had written to Caitlin suggesting, that we could take it off the agenda, we could talk about it. You can use this information and write in on your own if the board really would like to do something from the board, we can use. I guess the options would be, we could use the wording, these bullet points here, and just I can make a little thing, saying the town of Ulysses, about the town of Ulysses, add that in, and just, so we could send it in that way. I guess we'd have to do a resolution tonight, or Caitlin had suggested we could have a whatever 8 o'clock meeting Zoom meeting for a few minutes to do it after it was drafted better and you could see it. or not at all, and, you know, the public has the info now, and you have the info now, so it's totally up to you.
What's the sentiment of the board? I thought, I frankly would be comfortable to either do a resolution tonight
Yeah,
to,
I'm good with it.
Yeah, me too.
so I'm trying to think of how to.
I know I didn't write anything.
No,
out,
so
and
I would
hate,
say-
like
so-
having to do something off the top of your head.
So I would like to make a motion to draft a letter in response to the Climate Action Council's draft scoping, using the talking points and items presented in the meeting this evening,
To send,
to send to
to send the comments to,
Team Sport here, Bill and Roxanne.
to send draft the comments to NYSERDA. It's comments on the draft scoping plan that we would send to NYSERDA
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
before June 10th.
Yes.
So are you authorizing me to write that and then send it to Carissa to send in from the town as an official document?
Sure. Do you want to authorize me to sign what you write?
Right,
And
well, that's
then-
what I'm saying,
yeah.
how do
You
you,
draft it, you
how do you want the
proofread it and
process,
sign
right?
it.
You
Or we can
authorize
say-
the writing of the letter in support of the items mentioned and authorizing me to sign it.
Okay,
So by June 10th.
Right.
Excellent.
okay,
Well, that saved us a morning meeting.
All right.
yeah, sure, no, I mean, and it's fine if you didn't want to do it too, but it seems useful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's good to have some municipalities actually recognize it, even though they got 20,000 comments already. Will be 20,001.
Exactly. Well, now's our chance, right? Excellent. Okay, so we have, I made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Just a few upcoming, I'm sorry. I had one more. It was the one that I already put on the agenda. So the resolution that I provided is a freestanding one. This is authorizing an application for grant writing assistance from the Nature Conservancy. So the Nature Conservancy is providing free grant preparation and writing assistance to New York communities that are pursuing funding for flood adaptation and mitigation projects. This application for assistance does not commit the town to any resources beyond staff education time. But if we are select, and it only, we've been told, takes only 8 minutes to apply for it, to apply for this level. So basically, if you get accepted into this pool, then it opens up the possibility that the town could have the ability to go pursue flood, mitigation money. And that the Nature Conservancy would help us actually go through that application process. It does not commit the town to actually doing any of those things if the town so chooses not to do it in the future. But this would basically give us some
So
free
moved.
grant writing assistance. Second, all those are, any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. I wasn't 100% sure if I needed approval, but I figured the gatekeepers, when in doubt, follow the gatekeepers. Town hall will be closed on Monday for Memorial Day. We've got regular meetings scheduled for June 14th and June 28th. And on June 19th, the town will also be closed for the Juneteenth holiday.
But it's Sunday, so.
Right, but it's the Sunday, it's the holiday observed. So
Okay.
it's part of our recognized holidays.
Yeah,
So
but are you gonna have it closed?
still be closed
until the-
Monday.
Monday.
It'll be
yeah,
closed on
okay.
Monday. Yes. So
Right.
yes.
Because it says.
Oh, I see what you're
June
saying.
19th
I
is-
see. So yes, oh, that should be.
The
in the-
only reason I know
I
that is because
appreciate
it's my daughter's. birthday.
Well, then you will know that quite well. That's right. She has a weekend birthday. Great. So no, you're
Father's Day,
right.
too.
So it's
Yeah.
actually the 20th.
It is the 20th,
Right.
although to
Yeah.
be fair, it will be closed on the 19th.
It will be,
But-
exactly. I thought it was just redundant.
But it will, yeah, exactly. Thank you for that, catching that. Were
I
there,
wouldn't tell if it wasn't for the particular date.
well, as someone whose birthday is on Veterans Day, she
Oh,
will
there you go.
appreciate
Well,
moving
yeah,
forward.
for her birthday, just became a
Exactly.
holiday.
Are there any other board member announcements or updates?
So I just want to bring up something. So on the planning board, John was at the meeting the other night, which was very helpful. But no insult to Nate, but I don't know that it's overkill that we need Zepco and the lawyer
Sure.
and the attorney. So as long as Zepco's there, I think Nate doesn't need to be there.
Sounds good.
It depends on
On
Maybe
what?
it depends
The
a little
complexity
on
of the
it.
meeting.
Yeah, but that John can handle. I mean, we've been in many meetings with him where he could handle pretty much anything. But if it was something that we thought required.
Yeah.
Nate, then we'd ask him.
Well, I think Nate's gonna cry that he has not
Yeah,
to
Nate.
attend every meeting at the
Oh,
planning board.
no.
Yes. I appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Well, and just a question, he is also, the BZA can ask him to attend a meeting if
Yeah,
they need it as well.
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yep.
Sure.
And to the point, right, which I heard, for any project, if it's something that John feels I should be involved in, or the town would like me to be involved in, or the zoning or planning boards asked me to be there, happy to do it. You know, and I will say lots of towns have their planner handle it without an attorney present. And then the attorney comes in for an occasional large, major, complex issue that, you know, specific advice from the legal perspective is needed.
That's good.
And I think that's how we typically
Yeah,
have run
that's how
it,
we've
but,
done
but we were in kind of
We
unusual
were,
territory.
I agree.
Excellent. Were there any other announcements or updates?
I do have some, sorry,
Sure.
I'll make them quick. So at the CSAC meeting, can't get it out. People had expressed some, there's a couple people with expertise on the committee and enough interest on the permeable pavement issue.
Oh, great.
So I was thinking that maybe it would be, most effective if the board, obviously we'll do it tonight, but maybe we can do it at the next meeting, draft it out ahead of time, like could give them some instruction on what we want. Like we'd like to know, what do we want to know?
Yeah.
And, roughly what sort of timeline you'd like it on. I think that would be helpful for them to work off of rather than
Okay.
just
Except for this.
amorphously.
Yeah,
Well,
for the,
There was
Parking lot,
discussion, about the
Yeah.
ARPA funds and maybe town hall pavement, and maybe someone brought up permeable pavement, and so then it was sort of pushed to the CSAC to see if they were interested in taking that research on and bringing information to
Yeah.
the board on
Yeah.
it.
and are
Pros, cons, costs, that kind of thing,
they?
right?
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
we want.
right.
So I'm open, I opened up my
Right.
scheduling calendar. So what you'd like for the next meeting is you would like us to talk about what we'd like CSAC to do?
Well, I'm just suggesting that it would make it more, easier and more effective for them
Sure.
to work on it.
I just
Like,
want to make sure I got it
Yeah,
correct. Yep,
because
sure.
before the board has given, when they've asked CSAC for things, it's just like the electric car charger. It's like, I'd like to know all these things about it. What could we do? How much is it gonna cost? All that.
Well,
kind of
pros, cons, and what is it
Right.
gonna cost?
Exactly. So,
That's what we want to know.
right, that's
So
what we
we-
want to know.
I don't think we need a separate
Do we
meeting.
have a separate, a survey map that we've got recently?
oh, of the,
Yeah, of the building
Property,
that came up with this building, so that may be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has to be a big thing. I think we could just write that out, maybe attach the things that might go with it, and we'll give it
Yeah,
to
Right.
the
the
CSAC.
size of the park.
Yeah, exactly, to give
Right,
them
yeah.
some information. We don't have to have a big meeting to discuss it.
Right.
And
I'm
then,
just suggesting
Are- are
we can
you-
put that together.
Are you tending with them? Are you like guiding them with that?
No, I mean,
Okay.
no, I don't think so. Like, I think the people who know a lot about that, Andy Hillman seems to have had a lot of experience. with it.
yeah.
Terry had a suggestion he was gonna explore somewhere at Cornell. I guess
The
some people at
Peterson
Cornell
lot.
have done it. Yeah. And so if I suggested he talk to you because you know who to talk to.
Yeah,
at
we've got a
Cornell,
guy
'cause he didn't
upstairs
know.
that does all our
Right.
parking lots, so.
Right, so there's Cornell and then there's State Park. Someone was gonna look into the.
They are
Terry?
not happy with that. I
No,
can say,
exactly,
yeah.
but it's good to
But I don't know what
so-
kind it is.
Right,
and
so I think that's great. They wanted to do that anyway. I think that's good. And then the resolution to participate in the drinking water program I sent on to Steve Winkley. He's at a conference all week, so we haven't set a time to just have a call and talk through, what he thinks the next step, what his timeline is with the schedule and all that, and then we can talk about how to go forward next. Another thing I became aware of two other things that I just think is worth mentioning. One is that the 2022 DEC Climate Smart Communities grant program request for applications is open now. It's the consolidated funding application is how it has to go in. And those are due July 29th, so, not a huge amount of time, but one of the eligible actions for funding is a comprehensive plan with sustainability elements, like an update or creating one. And when we had our presentation with Rachel at the CSAC meeting, it was pointed out that, well, I knew that our whole certification is expiring in September of 2023. And certain things you have to update and other ones you don't if you want to keep your certification. But at any rate, our the comprehensive plan aspect of our certification has expired because it's 10 years. So that would make us pretty eligible for that. And so if the board wants, I can look further into what would be required to make an application and how much, how much work that would be. I mean, I'm willing to help with it if it seems doable. The minimum you can ask for is 10,000, the maximum is 200,000. It's a 50% match, but in-kind services count. And I mean, if the board is already committed to spending funds to do this, to get a company to help us or whatever, then it's just saving money if we got the grant. So it's not like adding another project. So if you want, I could look further into that and
Yeah,
bring
that'd
the
be-
info.
Yeah.
That'd be great. If you could also just share it too with Michelle, because I
Yeah.
was on a, or share it with me. I could share it
Yeah,
with
I
Michelle.
mean, I
if you
can
share it.
send you the link. and
Yeah,
everything.
no, that'd be great.
I
'cause-
just didn't send it if there's no interest. so.
No, because we were on a meeting today because we're going after CFA Monday, when we approved the grant application for the DEC
Right.
culvert, that's
Right.
gonna be part of the CFA.
Yeah,
so we're
it's
in
part of that.
timeline.
They have another part for that. I saw
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then the other thing, this also relates to money that's out there apparently, is at the CSAC meeting also, Terry Carroll, who's now the county sustainability officer who is on the CSAC and lives in Ulysses, mentioned that the infrastructure funding that's part of the federal infrastructure bill that passed earlier this year has opportunities in it for transportation projects that include things like multi-use trail extensions and development. And he said specifically that at a meeting he was in for the county, that this was raised by Fernando de Aragón. I'll probably say his name wrong. He's the executive director of Tompkins County Transportation. And so he was bringing this up that, maybe we should, let communities know about this and we potentially could work with them to do it. So there's been on and off a lot of interest in trying to connect, the Black Diamond Trail into the
Yes,
village of
right.
Trumansburg. And so Terry, thought that if we were interested in hearing more about that and what would be entailed or something like that, that Fernando would be probably really glad to come and talk to us about it. So that might be something to think about.
So
He said
yeah.
I thought it was like a couple of years that this, like a year or two anyway, that there was this window to do this, but I didn't get any more information than that. That's just what Terry said. I followed up with him a little, but I don't know from Fernando anything more detailed.
So I had a conversation with state parks actually about connecting, that there's interest in state parks, obviously, in connecting the rest of the trail with the village. The state cannot be the entity that applies for funding, but in the conversation with state parks, they were feeling a little bit, because it's our region, because they're doing so much with Camp Barton right now, that I think there was feeling like a workload capacity. So I know that, those lines of communication, I have those lines of communication open with state parks, so we could certainly talk to Fernando. It just becomes a matter of getting everybody on
Right,
the
I
same
mean,
page.
state parks might not have to do that much of it, depending on what they would give you for funding.
Right.
It might be mostly they would sort of oversee the plan and the actual implementation would happen by someone else. I don't know, but it's worth, I think, investigating if we feel like we have the time, because Terry said he seemed pretty enthusiastic about it.
Well, I have to talk to Fernando anyway. I'm happy to reach out to him and
Yeah.
reach back out to Fred and to see if there's any interest in mobilizing on that.
Yeah.
I know the real challenge for connecting that is going to be actually dealing with property owner.
Right.
There has to be access, so they have the right of way, but
Right,
that doesn't actually get you to a public road
right, exactly.
appropriately.
Right. So anyway, it's worth, or maybe there's something else too, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
That's great information. Thank you.
yeah, next time you want to connect with Fernando, that seems like a good idea.
No, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be
so-
talking to him about, I'm gonna be talking to him about the resolution we just passed on the highway safety, because we're
Right.
gonna be pulling information
Yeah.
for us
Great,
on that.
so.
Excellent. Was there anything else anybody had? That was wonderful. Thank you. Then we can move on to approval of the minutes. We had one set of minutes to review and approve. These were for our May 10th regular meeting. It's unusual that we only had one.
I had just one slight thing.
Sure.
That I wanted to, let me just find it, sorry, my computer went to sleep and I had to wake it up. Okay, there we go. trying not to have so many pieces of paper. So at the end, pretty far down, under New York Stretch Code updates and discussion. The second bullet says enforcement, the board could pass a law in September. But not begin enforcing it until January. So just to make that be really correct, I would suggest changing it to could pass the law in late August. And then add to it, but with filing and meeting dates for building code council review. Could, not begin enforcing it until January. So I think that's what I was trying to explain, because there's the timing of these meetings are every quarter, every 3 months. And so if you put in yours, and you can wait a month also, just after they met, then you get the full, wait till their next meeting to have it approved, which would be, if we did it in late August, it would be, we could wait until late September, past the 23rd date, and then it wouldn't go into effect until
2023.
December, which we could say will be January 1st,
Yeah.
2023, so.
Okay, can you repeat that, Roxanne?
Yeah. Enforcement, the board could pass the law instead of September, change it to late August.
Got it.
And then add, but with filing and meeting dates for the building code council review. And then it would be the way the rest of the sentence currently is. In case people.
Well, I would consider that a very good amendment. So do I have a motion to approve the May 10th, 2022 minutes as presented and amended?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are down to the privilege of the floor. Is there anyone from the public? There's no one here in person with us, but is there
So
anyone?
Someone was at the meeting
They-
and asked about comments.
They chatted with us. right?
Oh, chat, huh?
But she sent me an email about exotic animals, which I can.
That Aaron Pierce,
Yes.
Who was it?
Aaron
I
Pierce.
can-
Oh, Aaron, yeah, that's right. There was someone else named Carol.
Well, there was somebody SK Pad or
Right.
Yeah.
SJ Pad or something.
I can share it with you.
I think we should not, I think we should disconnect the chat.
Well, it ends up in the minutes.
Yeah, but there's conversations going on that are private during the meeting.
Well, they're actually public.
Well, they're not,
Yeah.
because we
No,
can't
they're
see
not if
them.
we don't.
Well, they
record them.
showed up here.
No, Carissa pulls them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and then if you look in the minutes, they end up in the minutes.
Right, but I don't
If
in
I
real
agree, it's
time
kind
get to
of
see what's in
distracting.
Oh, well,
the
there
chat.
was nothing. She was just
You can-
logged on late
You
or
can
something
shut
and
it-
asked if
shut it off.
she could
You
make a
can shut
comment.
it off.
Well, it's kind of convenient. I find it kind
I
of
mean,
convenient.
yeah.
The village doesn't
'Cause it-
allow chat. in there.
Well, it doesn't, that way you're not interrupting a meeting, say, hey, I've got a point here.
And well, this is
It
really funny because I'm on the university senate, faculty senate at Cornell, and there's been this massive
About,
argument back and forth about the chat and how like people who are in person when it's hybrid can't really see what's going on with the chat. So they don't think it's right, but the people who are in Zoom really like the
they like-
chat.
yeah,
And so they took to like, they just got so tired of the controversy that they allow it, they record, you can record the chat and put it in to the minutes and everything. And so, I mean, we can do whatever, but I'm just saying this is not a simple issue. And we could spend like a lot of meetings on it.
well,
Something to look forward to.
Yes, exactly. I
Feature
don't have a
Yeah.
strong position either way, as long as, I think if we're made aware that there were something in the chat, just so we know, then that's at least helpful, because we don't know
if
what
there's
the
a question, if
conversation.
there's a question and one town board member is reading the chat and responds,
Yeah,
it
no, I don't think
becomes
that's.
very
okay.
awkward.
Yeah. I don't
Well, no,
we
I
should
think
do that.
Carissa was managing it.
Or Carissa
Yeah.
responds or something. It's
Yeah,
not
I
like,
generally try not to respond.
but there's a
It's
crack in
it's
the
kinda
armor
Too
there.
much going on.
Yeah.
Right.
She said, is there gonna be another time to comment? So I said, yes.
Yeah.
we will.
Yeah, that's
Second
easy
privilege
to
of the floor.
tell someone.
when she said
So
that.
number 12,
Yeah, I don't think there should be.
Oh, I know, I saw Linda pop in, so Linda might have comments.
I don't think there should be expensive or controversial conversation in the chat.
We're having critters outside, so I can't say anything.
All right,
Well, it's nice to see you. Feel free to email us if you'd like to.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Very well, thank you. Meeting has been adjourned.